What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And that is for one reason, and that is because this movie is directed by Oz Perkins, who, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, I do a segment called the A24 Archive, where I review every single movie in A24's catalog. And I reviewed his film, The Black Coat's Daughter, which is a movie I've watched multiple times, and a movie that I think is incredibly underrated. There's so much attention to detail in the cinematography and the production design. The performances are astounding, and I love that movie a lot. And seeing that he was working with Maika Monroe, who I think is an incredibly talented actress, and Nicolas Cage, who is an all-time legend, and just the fact that this was centering around a serial killer seemed very much like David Fincher's Zodiac inspired. I was really excited to watch this movie, and the film I'm going to be discussing with you today is Longlegs. Longlegs is directed by Oz Perkins. In pursuit of a serial killer, an FBI agent uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve to end his terrifying killing spree. So, as I said, I was very excited to watch this movie. Huge fan of Oz Perkins and The Black Coat's Daughter. And this movie is one of the best movies of the year. I'm sure that you've heard all the hype around it and everyone saying how terrifying it is and how incredibly well made it is. And everything you've heard about this movie is true. Now, obviously, when something is said to be the scariest movie of all time, that's going to be super subjective. And this isn't like jump scare in your face horrifying, but it's very much a crawls under your skin and doesn't leave type of horrifying, which is something that I can really appreciate. And I'm very excited to give you my spoiler free thoughts today. So, at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Agent Lee Harker, played by Maika Monroe, who is currently working with the FBI to track down this killer known as Longlegs, who is played by Nicolas Cage. And his series of killings is all surrounding these entire families are being murdered on these little girls' birthdays. And the birthdays always fall on the 14th of the month for some reason. And whenever they go to the crime scenes, there's never any indication that he has been there. And it always seems like the father has committed this series of murders and then committed suicide. But they know he is involved because at every single one of these houses, he leaves these notes behind. Well, Lee is working with the FBI, and she seems to have this insight into the situation in an almost like psychic type of way, where she's connecting with this in a way that seems unnatural, that the police force is like, how are you able to discern this information? You're making more progress than we've been able to make on this in years. And the entirety of the film is Lee's character trying to hunt down Longlegs and stop him from committing any more of these murders, while he is seemingly on her tail and trying to convey a message to her, and it essentially turns into this like cat and mouse game. So as I said, this movie is phenomenal. I honestly, reading a lot of the hype around this movie, I wasn't sure it was necessarily going to live up to it, but it did so and then exceeded my expectations. For starters, I want to talk about what I think is the most important element of this movie, which is its remarkable cinematography. There are so many films now that are well shot, but so many films lack real intentionality in the camera work. This movie forces you as an audience member to stare at every piece of the frame, to where you're constantly trying to look and see, is someone being followed? Is there something in the corner of the room? What's behind this door? What's here? And Oz Perkins lets the cinematographer hold on these shots to give you as a viewer a long enough time to stare at every single element, so you might discern something that isn't necessarily popping out in your face. And that creates for an incredibly unsettling experience when you're curious as to what's going to happen in each and every moment. The highest compliment I can pay this film is there are multiple scenes that I will not be able to scrub from my brain anytime soon. Just the way that they're framed and the way that you are forced to look at some of this imagery. It's remarkable. Honestly, my jaw was on the floor by just how beautifully this thing was shot. I don't want to give too much away. I'm not going to give away any plots, synopsis, or spoilers, but there's one scene in particular where Maika Monroe thinks there's someone that has snuck into her house, and it's dark outside, and she's looking outside of her window, and the camera is like way outside, and we see her house in the complete dark other than what's lit inside, and then her outside security light comes on, and it lights outdoors, and it's just incredible. Like, it's one of those things that's just kind of seared into your brain, because it looks like a photographer spent a lot of time coming up with the concept and the framing for that shot. And there are so many sequences I could walk you through in the movie that all fall in line with that same type of thing, where it's like there's a ton of intentionality in the way this thing was shot, and I'm so thrilled for that. Next would be the performances. I think Maika Monroe is one of the most underrated actresses in all of Hollywood, and she truly is a horror icon. It Follows is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I've loved Maika Monroe since I've seen her in that film. She's been in a ton of incredible movies that are all somehow in the horror genre, and this movie is fantastic. I feel like there's something so amazing about how subdued her performance is. She has some comedic bits in here and like her dialogue delivery that I think work really well in contrast with how dark and depraved most of the movie is. And she just really carries herself well throughout the entire film. And I think it's interesting when we dive a little bit more into her past and learn more about her character. And it just really makes for a captivating experience. But I cannot go without talking about how I believe this is one of Nicolas Cage's best performances in his entire career. And I've watched a ton of Nicolas Cage movies. He is horrifying in this movie. He is able to go unhinged. He has some subdued moments. He is all over the place in this, and he creates this character that is one of the most memorable I've ever seen in a film. His look, they hide so much of it in the trailers, they hide so much of it during the movie, but when you see him, you'll never forget it. It's truly just an amazing transformation of this actor who has been in Hollywood for so long, that people know him for so many different roles, that he just steals the show in every single scene. And I was mesmerized whenever he was on screen. And he has some moments in here that are truly impressive and very dark and depraved. And there's no one else who could have played this role as well as he did. Another role I really want to commend is Kiernan Shipka, who is not in the movie for very long, but the scenes that she is in the movie, she is incredible. She plays this character who I loved the way she was introduced and just the dialogue she delivers in this movie. She's so committed to this role, even for the brief moments that she's in it. Blair Underwood, who plays like the agent in charge at the FBI, is also fantastic. I think his role is just truly incredible, and he has really great chemistry with Maika Monroe's character. And Alicia Witt, who plays Lee's mother, is just fantastic. Her character too, really interesting character, really well written, and I just couldn't get over how many phenomenal performances existed in this film. The sound design in this movie and the soundtrack choices also just accentuate that feeling of dread that exists throughout the entire film. And I don't want to dive too heavy into plot points because this movie's really new, but I love the way it kind of dives into like the occult. There's all of these different elements that we've seen in crime movies before, whether that be like the killer writing in symbols and having to translate it, her looking through crime scene images to see if she can pick anything out. Like, these are things we've seen in movies before, but Oz Perkins presents them in a way that feels so new and fresh and exciting that obviously it has some influences, but also exists on its own. And this movie's like an hour and 40 minutes, and it felt like it flew by. Like, even though the pacing is slow and steady, it's like there's always something going on that's holding your attention. You're always wondering what's going to be around the corner. And it really took some twists and turns that I did not expect. And the last scene of the movie is incredible. This is one of my favorite endings to a movie in quite some time. And I'm so thrilled for Oz Perkins and the entire crew that made this movie. This is such a unique and original concept that is executed just brilliantly. I have no notes for this movie. I truly think that it is remarkable. I think in a couple of years it's going to go down as a classic, might even be talked about in the same type of realm as like Fincher's Zodiac. It is that amazing. And I hope that this movie will get some awards recognition. The Academy seems to absolutely hate horror movies, but this movie, there's so much more to it. There's so much going on underneath the surface. It's a movie that you could rewatch 100 times, and I feel like you'd pull something new out of it each time you watch it. And I'm actually really wanting to go revisit this in the theater one more time before it's gone, because it is amazing. So have you seen Longlegs? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this is one of the best movies of the year and easily in competition for my favorite movie of the year. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.